All right, so the recording is on, so Senja, take it away.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello, everybody. My name is Senja, and I'm a front-end developer in Helsinki. And I thought that I would pick this kind of subject because I think that especially this year I have had many discussions with colleagues about that feeling of, that I am not enough or that they are not enough as a developer or a team member. And I thought I would just put this to the Tech Weekly calendar and let's see like how many people are interested in this topic. And this is a bit softer topic than I think that we usually have in Tech Weeklies. And I don't know, have you noticed my shirt here? But this is a statement, and I wanted to put this on especially for this speak because I think that we all could put the soft in the software development a bit more often. So that's the spirit and the statement of today's talk. First of all, I have to admit that I did a bit of clickbaiting with the topic. So I think that mostly I'm going to be talking about scarcity, but I guess that shame is something that usually gets people's attention. And then also blame rhymes nicely with that. And I think it's a very familiar tool command for many of us. So sorry for the clickbaiting. And if you're thinking that I'm going to be only talking about shame and blame, I will spoil it for you right now and say that we're going to firstly talk about scarcity. And now my pointer is not working, but let's fix it. Okay. So scarcity is a noun, and it means a state of being scarce of or in short of something, to have a shortage of something. And in this 21st century that we're living in, it might seem a bit paradoxical that we would have a scarcity or shortage of something because we have an abundance of food, water, material things, at least in the developed countries. But it seems like we have a lot of some things, and then mostly the important things we are running short on. For example, especially like time or like emotional resources. But since we're in the IT industry and we're working in the IT industry, I think that we also have a shortage of some things in IT. And I just wanted to lay this out. So I think that, first of all, we have a huge shortage of workforce, and especially competent and senior workforce. And in the job ad listings, I think that developers are most asked for a role or a position, then of course designers. But in my opinion, although this is not maybe so visible in the job ad listings, is like good product owners who know how to lead the team, to lead the product development. And in those places where there still is a role for testers, we have shortage of. And although this is really easy to say that, okay, we have a shortage of workforce in the IT industry, what it means is that this is a really big thing. I could have put in some numbers here to demonstrate how many estimates there are, but just to keep this in mind when we're talking about things that sort of come from this having a scarcity of something. Then, of course, another thing that we have a shortage, I think, is about money and budget. And we, since we work in an agency, a current consultancy, we are acutely aware of this. Our project and our works exist because our clients have money to buy our help and to work with them. But it's still, we're aware of, can we do this in this budget? Maybe the people who are working in product companies are not that aware, but I feel like as a consultant, I constantly think about where is this money? Is it enough? Is it enough to take us where we sort of want to be? And then, although this is not talked about often, I feel like we have a shortage or scarcity of users. And especially since I have a designer background, I feel like it has been very difficult to get contact and users who are willing to participate actively in the product development. So there is a shortage of feedback from the actual users and knowledge that really valuable knowledge that they would give us as developers. But then again, on a more macro level, I feel like, although we all know that there's a limited amount of people in the world, it seems that most of the leaders and companies are sort of expecting exponential or unlimited growth so that the product or service would get some more, money or budget. And therefore, it seems like everybody's always, battling for the next massive, huge masses of users to use their service and get their attention and therefore get the money. Lastly, but not least, we have a shortage of time. There's 24 hours in the day, and we have 8 hours of that to do our work. But at least I feel like there's still not enough time to to do our work. I don't know, to help each other, or for example, in this Corona time, maybe we have more time to do some things, especially at home, but then maybe not enough time or choices to, for example, choose who we see physically because of the virus and the risk of spreading the virus. But okay, so in a macro level, we have a scarcity of things in the IT industry, and how did this happen? Like I said, we have a lot of food and water and materialistic things. How in the IT industry did we end up in this place? This is very shortly put. I think that this is very superficial, but I just wanted to. I think that we need this kind of meta level pondering before we move on to maybe organizational team level thinking. And it's obvious that technology has developed very fast during the last 40 to 50 years. The capacity of memory or processor has exponentially grown, and the tools and the languages are all the time developing. And this means that, for example, teaching institutions haven't produced enough, competent developers or other workforce to help with this shortage. Then again, economies and recessions come and go. I think that we're maybe in the beginning of another one yet again. And then this idea of unlimited growth is always if this is the expectation, it's impossible to fulfill that. But then in a company or a micro environment level, something that can cause this kind of scarcity mentality or actual scarcity of something is, for example, layoffs or mergers. So when the company decides that we don't have enough money to keep all these people working for us, even though there is work to be done, then when somebody's laid off, there is a feeling of, okay, there are this many enough places left. So there's a scarcity of seats in the table, so to say. And especially if the company culture promotes comparison and success, there's also a built-in mechanism for, that there are only limited seats again. And especially if there are disconnection or silos between organization and units and departments, that's also one thing that drives into that mentality of we're not maybe enough. But okay, I feel like I've rambled on enough about the meta level stuff. If we look at scarcity culture or mentality with a more specific lens, this is what Brené Brown says that scarcity culture consists of. If you don't know Brené Brown, she has studied shame and vulnerability and disconnection in social encounters. And she says that usually in a company culture, if there's even one or more of these aspects available, comparison, disconnection, or shame, then you have a scarcity culture. And that is causing people to behave a certain way and, surprise, surprise, not be efficient or be productive. Let's dive into these specifically. And now this is us on a team level and even on an individual level. So if you want to know if your team or yourself or your organization is having at least a bit of a scarcity culture, ask this yourself. Here I have firstly I have general questions, and then I have also very tech related questions. Is there a constant overt or covert comparing and ranking in your team or in your mind? Has creativity been suffocated? Are people held to one narrow standard rather than acknowledged for their unique gifts and contributions? Is there an ideal way of being or one form of talent that is used as a measurement of everyone else's worth? And this is now the examples that I came up with some of the things that might be manifesting in a tech team or a like tech development process. For example, are tickets or story points counted per member at the end of the sprint? Maybe not officially, but even if there's that kind of sort of like a few members are counting and maybe talking about them, this is a symptom of, okay, there's obviously comparison happening here. Is everybody striving to be a 10 times developer? Or is it talked about often like, I should be more like this, or you should be more like this? Are only the senior developers' opinions and questions valued? Are there correct tools or correct technologies and libraries? I tried to come up with something like this, but I was just like, this is the only, like, I haven't heard this, but we use only VS Code here. I was tempted to put the Vim versus, what is the other one? Sorry, but I don't think it's a good example because that's a different kind of, I think it's a good kind of competitive or comparative humor. So sometimes this topic I feel is difficult to sort of see what is what. But I don't know. I have heard these kinds of comments like, don't use that library. That is bad. We use on this library here. So that is what I'm aiming at here. I'm not talking about the Vim and Emacs like discussion. Okay, but if you found that you've answered like yes to any of these questions, the answer is that yes. Unfortunately, there is some comparison in your team or in your culture. Next, are people afraid of taking risks or trying new things out, like technologies or roles, or even tools? Is it easier to stay quiet than share stories, experience, and ideas? Does it feel like no one is really paying attention or listening in dailies, meetings, or at the office? Is everyone struggling to be seen and heard? And these are more like techie examples. Is it difficult to get somebody to review your PR? Is it difficult to rubber debug your thoughts and code with somebody? Or is it difficult to get somebody pair program or pair code with you? And if you found, okay, yeah, are people late from meetings? And do people keep their promises? So if they promise that you, like they will get back to you about this something, like do they keep it or do they just ghost you and vanish into some things? Most usually like doing their own stuff. If you found that you answered yes to one or more of these questions, then unfortunately, there's some disengagement in your team. Finally, and this is the shame slide, and this is a difficult one. So is fear of ridicule or belittling used to manage people or to keep people in the line? Is self-worth tied to achievement, productivity, or compliance? Are blaming and finger-pointing norms? Are put-downs and name-callings rampant? What about favoritism? Is perfectionism an issue? And then some tech examples. Do people make rude comments or laugh at others' code? Is there a special token given to somebody who broke the build? I have never personally seen this kind of, or I haven't been in a team where this has been a sort of a process, but I heard from a friend about this, and I think this is extremely toxic. I hope that nobody here answers yes to this question. Are people perfecting their pull requests to make them bullet and review proof? Is the writer of buggy code always informed that their code was faulty? Are people blaming others openly in discussion and not just in the command line with git blame? And if you answered one or more times yes, then I'm sorry to say that there's some shame culture in your team. These are really very like harsh examples. I'm hoping that nobody has experienced these or is actually living or working with a team where these are sort of part of the process. But I wanted to point these out because the questions sort of in the beginning were from Brené Brown's like studies about shame and scarcity, and then it's sometimes really hard to think when somebody's writing in a general way, like is there blaming and finger pointing norms, for example? What does it look like in a different kind of or in niche environment? And like sometimes I've, for example, encountered people who make rude comments or laugh at somebody else's code or some other examples in here. And I just don't know, am I so privileged and lucky to be here at Futurice where I have very rarely encountered something like this. But I wouldn't be surprised if in other other consultancies or at the client there might be this kind of behavior, especially if the client or like whoever you're working with is not experienced in software development, then sometimes, somebody might think that, hey, this is a good idea to, I don't know, have a special hat for the person who broke the build so that they sort of won't do it again. But then it just doesn't, in the big picture, it's not a good thing to sort of have. Okay, I haven't actually defined shame, and this is also like what Brené writes in her research, is that this is one of the terms that people sort of don't fully understand what it is. Shame is something that means that you're labeling yourself as negative. So for example, the thought of I am a bad developer is a clear example of shame. And on a grammatical level, if the sentence has like shame in it, it's usually there is the are verb. So I am, you are, they are, we are. So that's shame. Therefore, I would be actually very interested to hear in the chat section, like how many of you found this sentence that I put into the description of this talk. As a developer, I'm not blank enough. How many of you felt that like your brain autofilled something into the blank with a show of hands, like, and then also comment something in the comments if you want to. It's extremely brave to put your hand up or like write something into the chat. I don't know. Olavi's trying to set up so that we could see it, but thank you to anybody who wrote something in the chat. I unfortunately cannot see it, but know that you're brave for doing it. And some things that I don't know what it is that you sort of autofill with, but what I've heard and what I've thought about myself is that, this blank space can be easily filled with, I'm not experienced enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not popular enough, I'm not, I don't know, people might be feeling that they're not general enough, they don't know enough about all the possible technologies, or then somebody else might be feeling that they're not specialized enough, or they don't know enough about some specific topic. But yeah, I just wanted to say that you are all enough, even though you might not feel it. Then as a team member, I don't know, is this how common this is, but same terms could be easily filled in here, because whatever you do, they also sort of affect the team, because this is teamwork that we're doing here. So if you feel that you're slower than the team, if you feel that you're not as experienced as most of the other team members or something, and then there might be special like other terms like being social enough, because this is teamwork. If you are an extreme introvert who would just like to be on their table and do this thing alone, then you might feel that you're not social or outgoing enough to be in this team. But I think we've mulled enough in this difficult feeling of not being enough. So let's move on to sort of the other term that Brené writes about, and sort of shame and guilt. I wouldn't say that they go in hand. They're sort of like, they're both fruit, but they're not. They're like apples and pears. But guilt is like labeling a behavior as negative. And here I have the example of I wrote a bad commit message, or I wrote a bad unit test. Could be another one. And in the sentence, like grammatical level, it doesn't have to be a verb. So it's usually like writing, forgetting, drawing, designing, doing. And even though there is a subject, I, we, you, it's not so tied to identity or sort of who you are. And if we compare these two concepts or feelings, shame is, like I said, it's tied to identity. It's being something. And as it is tied to identity, on a thought level, it's incredibly difficult to change. So if somebody labels you as something negative, for example, if somebody when you were a child has labeled you as a, I don't know, mischief, liar, anything, a bad person, on a thought level, that's incredibly difficult to change, because like, how do you change yourself if you are something? Like, how do you become a good person, or how do you become, I don't know, the opposite of liar? And therefore, to exhibit shame-based culture or behaviors is very bad, because like then we're sort of trapped in a cycle of negativity, and we don't get out of it. And unfortunately, according to Brené, shame is also highly correlated with addiction, crime, and isolation from society and communities and groups. Because this is a sort of, she says that shame is like the feeling of disconnection made very present. Because when you're feeling shame, you're sort of like, oh, I want to go underground. I don't want to be here. I don't want to see. I don't want to like be seen. I don't want to be heard. I want to be alone and go somewhere and hide because I am something bad. But then guilt is tied to action. And when it's an action that you're doing or not doing, it's a lot easier to change as long as there's some kind of learning materials and a safe space to do that. So if I'm writing bad commit messages, for example, I can change that. I can go ask my colleague, like, hey, what do you consider a good commit message? Or I can Google this, or I can practice it every day. So it's a lot better than labeling myself as a bad developer. And surprisingly, people who feel guilt, it's not correlated to addiction, crime, or isolation. And I think that, especially in Finland, unfortunately, at least sort of my grandma's and grandpa's generation, I feel like they raised our parents with shame rather than guilt. So they sort of said to their kids, like, you are a bad kid, or you are a bad person. And if they had said, like, you did, I don't know, whatever bad thing, like, I don't know, you poured the milk over, go fix that, but you're a lovely kid, then I think that a few generations would feel a lot better about themselves. I don't know how this situation is in the rest of Europe, but like, this is unfortunately shame culture, and leading by shame and raising by shame, according to Brené, is very prominent in our culture in the Western countries. So, but luckily we have this one kryptonite of shame that makes it disappear. So shame cannot live in an environment where there's empathy. If we show to the person who's feeling shame that I get you, I've been in the same situation, I have the same feeling, then they will, change gear in their sort of like thinking, and maybe try to see that, okay, maybe I am not bad. Maybe I did something bad, and maybe I can fix that. And if enough people, and since shame is like part of the scarcity culture, if we get enough people who show empathy, if we get enough people who are willing to show empathy, then shame like eventually dies. And when we have a critical mass of people thinking and doing things differently, the culture of scarcity will disappear. Here again, like important distinction, like the mental culture of scarcity, like thinking about scarcity, will disappear. But of course, showing empathy to a colleague is not gonna multiply them into 10. So it's not gonna reduce the actual shortage of workforce, for example. But at least we will be working with more in a more relaxed way, in a more, not casual is not the word I'm looking for, but in a more positive way. So it doesn't feel like you're the hamster in the hamster wheel who's running away from the thought, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. But it's more like, hey, world is good. I just pair programmed this awesome PR and somebody, approved it, and yeah, life's good. So how do we get to this point? I wrote some points here, like how to get rid of, for example, the comparison culture. So if you answered yes to the comparison slide questions, here are some ideas like how to get rid of it in yourself or in the team that you are. Okay, so the first thing to do is to remind the team that they're responsible together. This is a teamwork that we're doing. If like somebody fails or somebody doesn't, it's a team responsibility. There's no point in like blaming one person for their shortcomings when there are enough. There are people who could have helped with that. So if one person forgot or one person broke the build, the team should be responsible for that, because hopefully somebody in there could have maybe prevented it. Encourage pair programming or other types of collaboration in the team. Anything basically that sort of removes that feeling of, okay, you're, as an individual, you're doing this alone and responsible for it. Remove and like discourage individual rankings or count of tickets or whatever. And give thanks and give credit to people's individual strengths. Like, for example, I said to somebody in a project once that, thank you for documenting this. Like, I think it was a README. Thank you for documenting this. We forget to write these things down usually. So it's really important that somebody puts it down. Because, like, when you're in a team that is active, it's sort of like everybody knows it. But then when there's a new member coming in, it would be just so much easier if it wasn't the documentation. Or, for example, if you're in a hurry making new features and somebody has the energy to refactor the code like on a regular basis, thank them for it. Like, thank you for taking time to refactor. This part is really important that we renewed the code base on a regular basis. Give space and listen to junior developers and new members in the team. So this is like this total opposite of just don't listen only or value only the senior developers, because others also have valuable knowledge and points of view. And encourage diversity also in tools and technologies. How to empathize the shame away. Share experience of failing, not knowing, and learning, because the me too is the most powerful words and an emotion that sort of makes the shame away. Because shame is saying to you that you're not good enough and you're the only one, sort of, all the others are enough, but you're not enough. So when somebody else says, yeah, I did that mistake too, I broke the build last week also, don't worry about it, let's fix it. Shame flies out the window. And like I said, remove shaming processes like who broke the build token. Okay, I have a disconnected thought here, but I was the point was that replace this process. If you want to have something that you pass along, replace it maybe with, I don't know, 2 tokens of, people who prayer programmed last together or something. Hopefully something that sort of promotes the feeling of, yay, this is teamwork. Because if you, for example, have a token of somebody who helped someone else in the team, then it's also, although it's not a shaming process, it's giving like value to the one who helped, even though you're just saying out loud that thank you for helping. When we're labeling helping with positive, we're labeling the getting help with the negative. So I will fix this before I share the slides. So the point was to promote something that is done together, and it's not sort of, it doesn't have to be success. It's just doing something together. Interview in blaming, finger pointing, put downs and name calling. Like I said, I hope this is not something that we have to endure on a daily basis, but sometimes, especially in rough times, if there's arguments or difficult discussions, this might happen. And especially if you're in a sort of leader position, if you're a scrum master, if you're a product owner, if you're a senior developer, you have the most power to sort of stop this. But even if you are a junior developer and you have the courage to do this, it's like, wow, you're making a world and the team a better place by saying that, no, this is not enough. This is like, that this is not okay to finger point or blame somebody else. And the best antidote for this is that to remind that the team is responsible together. Same goes for interfering with rude comments and code mocking or laughing at others' code. And also, like, the best antidote here is like saying out loud that we're all human here. Like, everybody writes bad code if they have the wrong assumptions or when they are junior developers. So it just brings out the humanity out in all of us. Encourage people not to hone their PRs until the end of time. Like, try to remind them that the purpose of the review is not to find anything to fix. So it's not the point that you are perfect, but it's to share the knowledge and do something together. And of course, like, make sure that we don't get like obvious bugs or mistakes into production, but still, that's like, the point is to do together. I feel like I should do this I should have done this a drinking game, like when I said to say together, or that the team is responsible, you could take a shot. Instead of letting only the writer of buggy code know that their code was buggy, I think that this is it's another thought that I haven't written down completely, was that how about we share it with the team? Because, well, first of all, of course, like, team members change. Maybe the person who committed the buggy code is left. Then there's no point in, coming to their private inboxes telling you wrote buggy code. But if the person is still on the team, and we're thinking about the holistic sort of like team development, team understanding, and team knowledge, wouldn't that make more sense to sort of make that a case where you sort of point out that, okay, I found this kind of problem. It doesn't matter who made it, but maybe we could. I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention because it seems like it has been used in other places as well. I haven't tried this, but it was a thought that came to my mind.
Maybe especially if you're the one who wrote the buggy code, you can bring it up to that team and tell them what they can learn from that mistake.
Especially. Thank you, all of you. And then this, I don't know how many of you find this idea good, but I want to throw this out. How about changing the language of blaming even on the tool level? Because personally, I have, as a junior developer, I found the Git blame as something very, very scary. So there's always Git annotate. But I was very sad to notice that when I went to a Git guide and see like what's the history of this command, they said something like along the lines of, well, this is only for the users of, I don't know, Subversion or something like, we have only made this like command available because there are some people who don't know how to use blame or something like this. I was like, damn, should be the other way around. Like, annotate would be only as a term. I don't know what it outputs. I know it apparently outputs something a bit different than get blame, but I think that there should be a negative term that is the default that we're using. We could maybe alias that with something totally different, like whodunit, because that's what it's for, right? Or credit, yeah. Usually we say credit in a positive way, but technically it's also like, pointing out who's the author. No negative or positive, or just, I'm curious. So yeah, let me know what you think. Lastly, I wanted to point out that the opposite of scarcity is not abundancy, but it's enough. So instead of thinking that as a developer I'm not something enough, think that as a developer I don't yet know blank, whatever it is. This language, this tool, this paradigm, something, and but I will learn it today, next week, next month, next quarter, next year, and then I have forgotten. This is also maybe a good drinking game rule would have been like when Senja has a misplaced idea. The last one was supposed to be and know that you're enough with the skill level that you're in right now. Because if you feel like you're not enough with the skill set and the way you are, and you think about that long enough, I think that at least what I would do in this situation is that I would change my career. I would go work somewhere else if I'm not enough, because that's a tiring feeling. And then on the macro level, because we have a huge shortage of workforce, and junior people, senior people who know about development, that will only sort of increase the shortage. And I don't want to lose any more like colleagues from this industry. So yeah, know that you're enough and think about your like shortcomings that, well, I don't know this yet, but if I want to, I can learn it. I think this is the last one slide. How to be enough to yourself. I wanted to put this here because the previous examples were about the team level examples and sort of how to manage the team culture. And this is also something I'm not fully happy with myself, like my skill level in here, but I put down some thoughts. Because even if on a team you're feeling like you don't have a shame or scarcity culture, I find that, especially on Monday mornings, the thought of, damn it, I should have, I this week I will get this and this done, and, I will be faster and whatever the shame is saying. Sometimes these thoughts just, come to my head. I think that for female developers or women developers, it's especially common. I don't know about men or the like non-binary people, but I wanted to say that living with shame and shameful thoughts is a constant work in progress. And, when you consider the fact that the world and the industry around us has a prominent scarcity, like scarcity as just a shortage, and then the scarcity culture and the messages of, you're not enough are present daily. Like, especially for us women, the cosmetics, industries and fashion industries are saying that you're not enough, but buy this product and then you will be enough. So they're like constant. So no wonder that you have these thoughts. But talking about this with your friends, colleagues, and family helps it, and it helps a lot. So on a daily basis, say and remind yourself that you are enough, and try to label, like, if you feel that something that you're doing isn't enough, label as the action, as guilt and not shame. And especially, like, whatever you do, you write, you code, you design, or deliver, if you feel that that is not enough, think about where the enough comes from. Like, does it come from the business people, or does it come from sort of somebody outside yourself? Because if it comes from the outside, they don't have the perfect view or the best view sort of to say what you're able to write, to code, or design, or deliver this week, or this day, or this hour. And this is the last but not least. I cannot recommend Brené Brown's books. There's a typo there. She has written many books, but the ones that are especially good are Daring Greatly, Gifts of Imperfection, and then also Rising Strong. She puts this into words way better than I do, and she also has the most watched TED Talks about these subjects. I think that they're like the top 3 of all time watched TEDs. So yeah, cannot recommend her and her work highly enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Senja. Great talk. Do we have questions here in Helsinki or online?
I can
questions
check.
Here in Helsinki?
Yeah, there are some comments about imposter syndrome is real. Totally agree with that. Yay. And then there's people saying all kinds of things, I guess, to the, who has felt, whose brain out-filled the stuff for you. Thank you, Lauri, for saying that. Doing mighty fine. Important stuff well put together. Yay. Thank you, everybody. There's so many people saying great talk. Thank you, Senja. Thank you, great talk.
Great stuff.
Yay.
Maybe I could ask one question.
Go ahead.
So one question about like honesty. Do you think honesty will help with the imposter syndrome in a way that when you like, if you try to fake too much, or like kind of like if somebody asks you something, you always answer yes, I like try to fake that you know everything, then it makes just the situation worse for you and your teammates. So maybe it's better to be honest. If your client asks about something, just be honest. I don't know about this, but I can try to figure out.
Yes. Okay, this is a good question. I don't know. Did everybody hear the rest of your question? I think okay. But Olavi asked, like, as a consultant, do I see that it's like, should we always be honest about the level of our knowledge? And I think this is a very relevant question. I don't have an answer that I'm like fully satisfied with. But I can say that, like in the last place that I worked, they had a strict policy. Well, not a policy, but it was like an understanding, shall we say, that it was like brought to the new members in that organization. They had a very like rough way of coaching client interviews, and what you should say and how you should behave in those client interviews. And one of the things was that if you were asked a question that you sort of don't know, always answer like, yes, good question. I haven't then there was the like acknowledging of I haven't worked with this technology, but I've used this and this, which is a lot similar and sort of that way. So they had a policy of sort of faking till you make it, and like comparing what I felt like how Futurice does things is strikingly different. So for example, here I think that I have heard people say in client meetings and like in their client work that I don't know, and then sort of leaving it at that. Whereas in the previous company, they would have said, they would have stared you down and been like, you did what? Like, you left the client hanging and you as a consultant, you said that you don't know. At least you could have said like, but I will find out by Monday, or I don't know, something. So I'm in a bit of two minds. I guess that it's always good to sort of add that kind of like, but I will find out, or I will, I don't know, make a Trello card or a Jira card or whatever, sort of make it to the team agenda, sort of. So I would like to be honest in the client projects, because I think that it would be good that the clients also understand that we we don't have enough people to do this, or the tools and the technologies are evolving so fast that we just cannot know everything and do everything and sort of. But then some clients or some people might not like work well with that, because if they want certainty and control, then they might kick you out because you're saying something that is very, very human, and I don't know. Yeah. So this is my take on things. I would be interested in knowing like what the other people think. Like, do you have cases where if you had faked it till you make it, like what happened, or if you have been radically honest and said that I don't know, but I will find out. Anybody want to share, either Helsinki or in line? I'm going to check the comments. Yes, in the chat, Viljami has an excellent point that one of our core values is transparency. I hope this also means that we are honest about our abilities. Excellent point.
Yeah, I think in the long run, that's a lot better.
Yeah, me too. And then Christian says that, but aren't we supposed to be experts on everything to warrant the consultancy price tag? I'm hoping that, Christian, this was an ironic question of yours. But it's a really good point, because I felt like in the previous... yes, thank you. Because in the previous consultancy that I work with, they would have said that, yeah, that's exactly, or sort of the unicorn that we have hired, and now we're selling you to these other people. So yeah, but I agree. We're not, being a consultant doesn't mean that you know everything. It just means that you're educated in certain areas, and then.
I had a point,
Hey.
Client hasn't, or we're not selling you as a consultant, as an expert on everything. We're selling Futurice. So you can always refer to experts that you have sort of inside Futurice. You don't need to know everything yourself.
So one thought that this brought up is that maybe we should be more explicit about it, that it is, or it, at least a part of like succeeding as a senior or a lead developer is making sure that the junior developers can succeed in the project as well, and like find tasks for the junior developers in which they can, of course, like that are challenging enough, but in which they can highly likely feel successful in the end. And of course, still, like, it's a delicate matter to give feedback, and of course be constructive. And I guess we should never end up in a situation where like giving feedback, like there would be some kind of it would feel difficult to give feedback because you might like someone might feel bad because it. But then at the same time, maybe like it would be good if lead developers could find tasks also in which the solution doesn't need to be perfect for a junior developer, so that like it doesn't matter if the solution is suboptimal and you know it, and you can give that feedback, but you can still like merge it to master and take it to production without having the junior developer like iterate on it forever before like feeling, just like a good idea that maybe this should be more explicit. And
Yes.
if you're appointed as a lead developer, like it should be part of your expertise.
Yes.
And like
definitely. I agree 100%, because it's like whoever writes the tickets and sort of says that what is because bigger problems or more difficult problems, we can always break them into smaller parts, and then give either, well, not maybe all of those parts, but at least some well-defined parts to junior developers. So yeah, totally agree with what you said. Excellent point. 1 minute left, so we have time for one more quick question if there is.
So the question was a random thought. Do you think there's correlation between shame culture and as in it reflecting into comparison culture? Like, do you think sometimes the shame can be a driver for comparisons?
Yes. Yes, I do. Because sort of, if like shame is a feeling of disconnection, I'm not worthy of being in the team or being in this group. But then you're sort of, the comparison is a sort of, is like it's a bit of a hack, so to say. It's like you're aware that maybe there's some kind of limit. Maybe it's like amount of seats on the table or amount of something in the team. And then you're sort of feeling that, okay, I'm just below the level of being good enough to fit in. And then if you find that there's somebody else, along those lines, you could maybe, somehow push that other person out, and then you would be accepted. Then if you compare yourself and then sort of start competing, not in a good way, but in a bad way. So yeah, that's how I see it.
All right. I guess we're running a bit out of time, so thank you again, Senja.
Yeah.
We can continue the discussions in Slack.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.